The Cosmic Briefing, hosted by award-winning author Dr. Allison Brown, opens the door to disclosure, consciousness, galactic history, and humanity's awakening.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Cosmic Briefing. Thanks for joining me today. So a couple of episodes ago, I talked about Julia Mossbridge, who's a neuroscientist, doing some work in the field and speaking about the metaphysical and spiritual topics that we talk about here. But the cool thing is that whenever a scientist starts talking about or bridging this gap between science and metaphysical or spiritual practices, it gets really exciting for me. And there's another one that I want to bring to your attention, and that is Donald Hoffman, who is a current professor at UC Irvine. He's an MIT-trained neuroscientist, and he wrote a book called The Case Against Reality. So some of the concepts that he's talking about are exciting to me because it's what the metaphysical practitioners and the spiritual and religious leaders have known all along, but haven't had the way to prove. We haven't had methods of proving. And so what Donald said is that he's sort of helping mathematics explain some of these principles that we have known throughout history. He also created an institute called the Trace Institute that is working on studying consciousness and studying all of these questions and the metaphysical and spiritual ideas that we've been talking about. He calls it a convergence for humanity, and it's really exciting because I think in the next few years there are going to be some breakthroughs and some exciting evidence. You know, it's always been difficult to prove some of these concepts that we talk about, but that's what he's working on, and I want to share some of that with you today. So the first thing that he says is that consciousness is the true nature of reality, not the neural activity. So in other words, our brain doesn't create consciousness, but rather consciousness is interpreted by the brain. He says that life is like a virtual reality game. So in other words, the space-time construct in which we exist is like the headset. So we put on this headset called human life. It creates a space-time reality so that we can interact with one another, so that consciousnesses, whether it's two human consciousnesses or the consciousness of your cat and you or the tree and you, we can interact using this headset essentially. But that consciousness is out there and it's everything. So he calls this game a process of avatars. Our human body, he says, is the avatar. But most importantly, we are not the player, we are actually the creator. And you've heard me say that we create our own incarnational contracts, and that is true. So we are that energetic, that consciousness piece inside this physical body, this physical avatar that created the game that we are playing. This is fascinating and has far-reaching implications for how we navigate through life, how we interact with obstacles and challenges, and how we serve, ultimately. And so if we are the author, not the player, then what he says is we can step back and we can observe ourselves. So we're the watcher, we're the observer. And you probably have heard this if you delve into the metaphysical a lot. We are not the thought, we are actually the thinker behind the thought, right? So what he says, Dr. Hoffman, is that in order to create peace, we need to put ourselves in that state of watching more often, that state of observation. So he says, he uses this example, and I know I can really relate to this example, as can my husband. When you're driving down the highway and people cut you off or you find yourself getting upset, in any situation really, when you find yourself getting upset or angry or sad, pause for just a moment and observe those emotions. Observe that being, that avatar that's doing who's having the anger, who is having the sad experience or the frustration or whatever it is. Pause for a moment and say to yourself or think, wow, I see this fear, I see this anger, I see this grief welling up in my physical body. But when you separate yourself, and it gets easier over time, when you separate yourself from those emotions and realize that you are not those emotions, you are observing yourself having those emotions, then it can be easier to release those emotions and go, wow, isn't that interesting? This drive, for us it would be down to Charleston, this drive down to Charleston is really making this physical being of mine upset or angry or stressed out. And the more that you do that, you can separate yourself and put yourself in the place of the observer, which is peace. Because that is the space of consciousness. That's the space of the divinity that you are. And in that state, there is nothing but peace and love and calm and stillness and compassion. And so practice that, he says. Practice that if you wish to understand how to navigate this human existence that we have in a calmer way, in a more peaceful way, in a less stressful way. Everything that you see, he says, because this is a sort of virtual reality, everything that you see is a reflection of what's going on inside. And I've said this before in a different podcast, different episode, is that your exterior world, your outer world, is only a reflection of your inner world. And so that's what he explained, is that when you come in and you've created this contract, you've created this life, you come in and that is the path that you go on. That is your reality. That's the game that you set up for yourself to play. And so the way to master the game is to understand yourself as not the player, not the avatar, not to become too enmeshed in the story and the human body, but to understand yourself as the author and the observer. So in other words, I created this story. Why did I create that? Why did I create these experiences in which I was going to become frustrated? Why did I create this relationship with this person in my life who's going to trigger me? What do you think I was trying to do? What was I trying to learn? What lesson can I learn by becoming the observer and watching my avatar react? Puts a whole new spin on this navigation of life, on this game of life. So in other words, we're the watcher, not the story. And that in itself, when you can pause, creates peace. And I want to tell you, the interview that I was watching with him, the interviewer asked him for 3 things. If he were on his deathbed and could only tell the world 3 things, what would they be? 2 of them I've sort of already covered, this idea of consciousness and this idea that we're the watcher, we are the author, not the player. But the last one was important, and I think it was his number 1, and that is that love is all there is. It's all about love. And I thought that was fantastic, given that it's coming from a neuroscientist, a guy who's all about numbers and experiments and scientific exploration. He's not a woo-woo guy. I think he is now, but that's not his field. He is not a metaphysical practitioner. He's a scientist. And for him to say that this reality that we're talking about of our own creation, love is the key. Love is the glue that holds it all together. So love is what we are after, ultimately. I thought that was just amazing. And right as I was about to turn off the video, I thought it was the end, he said one more thing that I thought was quite profound, and that is that arrogance is a failure to recognize who you are. What? In other words, we are the I am. We are that divinity. We are the master of this game, and we can master it. And so when you realize that you are that divine and that every other avatar out there is also the divine, and it's you competing with you, there is no reason to compete any longer. There is no reason to have success for success's sake. He said, if you're going to have success, and there's nothing wrong with that, rather than being arrogant about it as if you are better than somebody else because you succeeded in this particular area, it's about using that success or those skills and abilities to help other people, bring them all along with you. There's no need to sort of jump over everyone and try to succeed at the expense of others, because you are the others. We are all a part of this unified field, this greater collective consciousness that exists all around us. We are that. We are all connected in that way. And so even in the Bible, when they said, do unto others, that's what they were talking about. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, because they are you. And that's what he was saying. And it's just incredible how fast this is happening now. We, again, I tell you, have incarnated at this auspicious time purposefully. We knocked people out of line to come down here in a physical incarnation because of the changes that are happening, and they're happening exponentially now. And when, in just a matter of a couple of weeks, these scientists are coming out of the woodwork to talk about this sort of stuff, it's a game changer. And when they finally have the experiments and the evidence and the mathematical principles behind some of these concepts, there will be no more excuses, and I think life will become just beautiful and blissful. So I'll leave you with that. If you have a chance to watch interviews with Donald Hoffman, please do so. But thank you so much for joining me today. Until next time.